Welcome back to He's a Giant. This is our reaction pod after the Giants' 40-7 home victory against the Washington Commanders. I'm Sal. This is my co-host Monte. Monte, you've been having a fun couple hours. How's it going,
Yeah,
man?
it's going good, man. I'm happy. We got a win. We got a couple other teams got wins too, who are at the bottom of the league. So it's kind of a win-win type of situation. How you feeling?
Every, yeah, everybody took a week off from Tankathon, so it's a
Yeah,
nice little break from that. I felt great. I felt great. Didn't know how I would feel going into this game.
yeah.
Um, I have to be honest, like some of the energy of being a Giants fan was zapped out the first 6 weeks, so it's hard to
hmm
like get too pumped up. But they really sucked me back in the last couple of weeks, and it was fun to watch them play today, man. They were lively. I know they didn't score a lot of points, but they look good. They look good on offense. They look great on defense again.
Great on defense.
Yeah, and it just was a really impressive win. Um, yeah, let's start on offense. What are your takeaways? I mean, we saw Tyrod Taylor come in for his second game.
Mhm.
Looked like he was in command of the offense again. Had a really big first half. Had over 200 yards passing in the first half and two touchdowns. The Giants' first half touchdown of the season. Their first touchdown at home this season, and he put up two of them right in the first half. And they had 14. I think they had a 14-0 lead at halftime. Um, and then they just kind of it looked to me like they shifted more to just kind of a running game in the second half, and they were trying to play a lot more ball control, a lot of
Mhm.
clock management. And they didn't score in the second half, although they did lead some good drives. But what were your takeaways from offense?
Yeah, man. I mean, first of all, just where this offense has been, it's hard to not be happy about what you saw. I know that a lot of people continue to stick to like, oh, well, you only put up 14 points. Like, well, we put up our only offensive touchdown we put up in a month, and we did it twice. So, like, that's a
Amazing.
that that's a big step from where we
Yeah.
were. And most importantly, I felt that we were having explosive plays and maybe not 25 plus always, but like 20-yard plus plays. I think we had 7 20 plus yard plays that game. I had a list here of it. There was a 42-yard play, a 33, a 32, a 27, a 22, a 22, and a 20
Mm.
all 20 plus yards. Like, that was great to see. We haven't had a lot of that this year. So, you know, I I was really excited to see that. The team seems to be rallying all around. And it's really nice to see Jalen Hyatt and Darren Waller involved in this offense. That was two guys we've been begging for them to get involved. It really feels like Tyrod Taylor is willing to take shots to Jalen Hyatt and use that speed. And Darren Waller finally seems to be kind of a go-to weapon on this team with that receiving touchdown to kind of start it all off. What are some of your thoughts?
I think this offense looks really different with Tyrod Taylor under center than it did with Daniel Jones in the beginning part of this year. And I know people are going to get really freaked out about that comment, and they are on the timeline. They're battling, but I think it's pretty clear that the offense just seems to run more smoothly. And I think you can acknowledge that not all the variables are the same for both of them. Tyrod's had Saquon Barkley back these last two games, and I think it would be disingenuous to say that doesn't have any impact. Um, but keep in mind, Saquon Barkley didn't really have much impact that first three quarters of the first game, and back in, I mean, he had a good game. It wasn't his usual, home run hitting self today, but he was solid.
Yeah, it's better than
But
last week.
but just looking at the performance of the offense overall, it looks to click with Tyrod in there. And I think the biggest thing, like you said, is explosive pass plays. If anything, this team is underscoring what it should be based on its production of explosive pass plays. Like if you produce explosive plays on drives, you should be scoring more touchdowns. Um, and you can point to, or at least more points. You can point to a couple things, right? So he put up 14 points, but on one of the drives where he had an explosive pass play, a big deep shot down the right sideline to Hyatt, Saquon Barkley fumbles the ball at the 9 yard line.
Yep.
Um, and I mean, there's nobody on earth who didn't think the Giants were going to go and punch in a touchdown at that point, the way they were moving the ball with ease. um, Graham Gano, I don't know what's going on with him. Missed another chip shot field goal.
Short one, yeah.
Yeah. I heard it was a little bit windy at the stadium. I always like to remind people when that happens that just the Giants could have had a retractable roof for the exact same price of what Daniel Jones' contract is. I looked it up. It's about $150 million for one.
Ay,
Here's
ay,
a
ay.
fun here's a fun story. Apparently, the New Jersey wanted the Jets and Giants to have a retractable roof when they built MetLife, and it was the Jets and Giants who refused to do it because they didn't want to shoulder the cost. So they paid $1.7 billion to build a stadium, but refused to pay the extra 100 million or so in 2012 to build the roof. Just think about that for
Yep.
a second. Anyway, so I do think Tyrod Taylor looks better and more comfortable back there. It's pretty clear, and I think the locker room responds to him. You can see the way guys are playing; they're responding to it. I think it's understandable. I don't think that necessarily them taking a knock on Jones, but guys like Hyatt and guys like Waller have probably been sitting there waiting in the wings to get unleashed in this offense. And here they are finally producing, and it's because they're getting the ball thrown their way.
Yeah,
So
and look,
that's
Jones
it.
Jones isn't their guy for those guys, for, like, a Hyatt and for, like, a Waller, like, they weren't here last year,
Right.
and, they finally are getting the ball, and I'm sure
Mhm.
they're ecstatic about it. So, it's a different situation, a guy like Slayton, for example.
Yeah. So I mean, I think the offense just looks better under Tyrod. He finished the day 18 of 29 for 279 yards, two touchdowns. Um, but I pulled up a couple of advanced stats on him for whatever's already out from NFL Next Gen stats. I mean, some of these numbers are really remarkable for people who want to downplay what he did. His time to throw was about 2.8 seconds, so maybe a little on the high side there. Probably want
Mhm.
it closer to 2.6, 2.7. Um, so there was if there's a knock on him, it's probably that. He was 2.82, but completed air yards, he was at 8.8 completed average completed air yards. That's third best so far of the 24 quarterbacks playing or that have played. Intended air yards, he was at 10.8, third best of all of the quarterbacks who have played so far. Average air yard differential, he was at where was he? He's lower here. He was at -2. That's like middle of the pack. Aggression percentage, which at least in theory measures whether or not you're throwing the ball into tight windows within 1 yard of separation. He was at 20.7%. That's 20% of his throws. That was fifth most aggressive in the NFL. Um, Longest completed air distance. He was number one in the NFL, 53.2 yards. Average air yards to the sticks. He was number four in the NFL, one. Um, His passer rating was 116.9, 15. That's fifth best so far in the NFL this week. He had a completion percentage, I want to say like 60% or something like that. Um, yeah, he was at 62%. That would be,
66.3.
was that today's number? Okay.
I believe so, yeah.
Um, so, all in all, that's a really good performance. I mean, just objectively solid individual quarterback per play. That's what you can say, and
Yeah.
that's 2 weeks in a row of it. He was really solid last week. He's solid this week.
He was
The offense
number
is
5 according to PFF last week of all quarterbacks in the league.
right, and if you look at these other advanced metrics like EPA, CPOE, it's solid. Like he's up
Mhm.
there. He's playing like at a top five, top 10 level the last couple of weeks. Obviously, it's a relatively small sample size, just
Yeah.
2 weeks. But for those 2 weeks, he's performing, and he's got the offense looking confident. It's true to say they're not scoring points, but sometimes you kind of have to look at the circumstance a little bit. Again, Saquon Barkley, the fumble, they're putting up 21 points there.
Mhm.
Total right there. Right off the bat, that's 21 if he doesn't fumble that ball. I'm confident they're punching that ball in. The Graham Gano
24
missed
too, yeah.
it's 24 right there. So I think at minimum you could say they're probably heading for 24. Last week they scored 9, but um, the two drives that ended on the 1 yard line to end each half, I think under normal circumstances that ball gets punched in if the
Yep.
clock is in their favor.
Mhm.
And then, you know, the just again, you're talking about points adding up. It's not a spectacular offense by any means, but it's looking like kind of an average offense with Tyrod Taylor,
Yeah.
which is a pretty far cry from the 31st or 32nd ranked offense in the NFL before he took over. And I think that's the discussion. People are going to say, "Oh, well, the offensive line looked better." Oh, well. let's see what I'll just say. They said the same thing last week, and then people did a film review and said, "Well, the line wasn't. It was maybe a little better, not much better." And when you actually got the PFF grades on the individual line performances, they were ever so slightly better than the week prior. Not a big difference. I'm curious what they're going to end up being this week. But even if they are, you're talking about Justin Pugh playing at left tackle, who to me again looked pretty bad out there.
Yeah,
Chase Young
I
was
mean,
taking was eating his lunch all game.
yeah, I mean, Chase Young had a career day this week. He had 2 sacks and 3 tackles for a loss. There was a holding penalty that we was purely gonna run and take Tyrod's head off if Justin Pugh didn't basically tackle him to the ground, and,
Hmm.
was he I can't remember who, but there was that one, like, illegal contact down or, like, defensive holding where, they were about to get Tyrod in back-to-back
Right.
sacks, and that one got
Yeah.
wiped off.
Yeah. He was in the backfield all day. He was wreaking havoc. And again, I'm not blaming Justin Pugh. The guy stepped off the street and he's playing left tackle for the first time in forever, or,
Yeah.
or ever essentially. And so
I
he's
think he
struggling.
hasn't started there since he was in college.
Right. So it's but he looks bad out there. I don't, he,
Yeah.
he looks
No.
legitimately bad out there. Tyree Phillips looks solid at right tackle. I don't think he looked amazing, but he might have looked a little bit better than Evan Neal had.
Yeah,
That
he
might be the
got
case.
saved on a sack where, there was one where Bellinger, his guy got the sack and he got killed. Tyre Phillips got killed on that play, but Bellinger's guy got there first.
And I saw plenty of reps where McKeithen had guys flying by him. So again, well, I'll wait to see what the final numbers look like. Overall, I wouldn't say the offensive line looked demonstrably better or demonstrably worse than usual weeks. I'm going to go ahead and guess that if we use the PFF scoring on average of line play, that they're going to be kind of in the ballpark of last week. I'd be surprised if they were better than that by
Yeah.
much.
And for the most part, that's what we've seen. There's been like a couple one-off weeks this year where they've really gotten killed. And for the most part, it's been pretty similarly bad. It's been bad, but it's
Yeah,
been like on a similar level to last week, to
right.
Seattle. And like the Cardinals game was actually the one good game. They had a pretty solid week for versus the Cardinals. But people are saying this is the best week we've had. I have a hard time believing that because I think we only let up like 8 pressures versus the Cardinals, and there's no
Right.
chance we beat that. We let 4 sacks alone. That's 4 pressures right there. So
Right. I mean, he got. I mean, so Tyrod's been sacked 7 times in 2 games, um, and I think if you look at his Dan Duggan had released an article right after the game. If you haven't had a chance to read it, you should take a look at it. But he talked about the pressure rate to sack conversion rate, the
yep.
pressure to sack conversion, and it's a huge difference. So yes, Daniel Jones has been taking more sacks. And so I think some people will look at that and say, well, he was under far more pressure. Not really. The pressure rates are fairly similar. The difference is the pressure to sack rate. Tyrod Taylor is I think around 12%. He's turning about
Mhm.
12% of the pressures are turning into sacks. Daniel Jones at 30%. So,
Yep.
2.5 times the number of sacks per pressure. And I think that's visible. Like that number passes the eye test, right? When you watch it, there are plenty of instances where Tyrod Taylor is sidestepping pressure, sensing it, moving, showing better pocket presence, and turning what would probably be a sack or a broken play with Jones into positive yardage. There was the 3rd and 5 to Saquon Barkley in the fourth quarter, if you remember, where
Mhm.
he's getting immediate pressure from, like, again, I think it was either from McKeithen's block or Pugh's block, and he just sidesteps to the right and finds Saquon in the flat for the first down. And there were several instances like that throughout the game and the last couple of games. I think the bigger discussion here, which is not so much is Tyrod Taylor better than Daniel Jones. I think that you can make a pretty strong case that he is so far this season, that the offense
Yeah.
is better. He's producing far more explosive pass plays given his opportunities. He's avoiding pressure. He's avoiding sacks much better. And he's got the offense just humming better. And it may not have completely translated to points yet, but it's one of those things where, like, you keep this up, the points are going to come, right? You're not going to have these like fumbles and inside the red zone as often. You're not going to have missed field goals as often, so you're going to get more points. I think the bigger question though is the bigger issue is if they're even close. That's a real problem. Again,
Yep.
that's the issue. It's not like, is Tyrod better? And I think he's better personally. I don't see any evidence that he's not better than Daniel Jones so far this year. But the issue is, why is he not significantly worse than Daniel Jones? Tyrod Taylor's making $5.5 million on average these 2 years, and Daniel Jones is now making 40. And we have a problem that this is not a clearly answered question without any doubt that Daniel Jones is significantly much better than Tyrod Taylor. That's an issue. That's a Joe Shane issue, to be totally
Yep.
honest. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, man. I mean, I know people will bring up that, Tyrod's a high paid backup. And I get that in the sense where you'd expect him to come in and operate an offense. But where the offense was currently playing and what people said, like, hey, a QB can't operate under what circumstances we have. And he comes in and be like, well, I can. That's so like
Yeah,
it's not a good look for Daniel Jones. And people will point to like, oh, the offensive line was fixed, and I it's not fixed. There is a lot of issues with this offensive line still. It is still a bottom of the
it's
league
awful.
offensive line. We are what I mean, Saquon Barkley didn't even average over 4 yards a carry. Like our running blocking is still completely horrendous. Our pass blocking is still not good. I know that there's, maybe we'll find some context with with the sacks, but I felt Tyrod was constantly getting pressure in the second half there. You know what happened is when, Tyrod got a chance, he took shots. You saw that with, the drive that he took that shot to Hyatt, he was
Yeah,
getting killed on that drive. He got
yep,
one really good rep where they got good blocking and he hit his guy deep. So, um, I mean, it's not good. It's not good that we're seeing such a small drop off and you know, maybe there's a situation where Daniel Jones and Tyrod Taylor are on the same team, and there's a strong offensive line and a strong receiver core, and there is a big difference between Daniel Jones and Tyrod Taylor, but on this team that they paid him to be on, I don't see that difference. I think Tyrod is playing much better at this point, honestly.
yeah, and that's an issue. And the fact that it's not a clear cut answer is an issue. Um, and I think that's going to be the biggest thing. And I think Dan Duggan touched on that in his article as well. Like, that's the problem. It's not like who's better. The question is that it's not clear. The problem is that it's not clear. Um,
Yeah.
Not resoundingly clear. So I forgot who asked the question of Dable after the game. Is Tyrod Taylor, has he earned the job even when Jones is healthy? And a few days ago, like what was it, last Monday, he kind of scoffed and got angry that the question was even asked.
Yeah.
Um,
Like
and
Dable
essentially
started
was
working.
dismissive and was like, "This is Daniel Jones's job." And today his answer was far less dismissive. He said something along the lines of, "Well, Tyrod played a really good game today. He's a real good pro, and we're happy to have him." That's all he said to the
Yep.
to the direct question. And you have to believe that Brian Dable is responding not just to what his own eyes see, like same thing we're all seeing, but he's
Mhm.
probably responding to the locker room. Um,
Yeah.
you know, it's hard to imagine the locker room is not pumped up with the way things have been going the last couple of weeks, and they know who's under center, and
Mhm.
and he's a respected veteran. This is not like some nobody off the street. So it's going to be an interesting next 7 days. They have the Jets coming up next week, um, which will be obviously an interesting. It's a home game for the Giants, um, an interesting test against one of the top defenses in the NFL. And by the sounds of it, Daniel Jones might be getting closer to be getting cleared for contact. That's what we're hearing reports of. So if he's cleared for contact and he's ready to play, I'm assuming he's going to get the start. But it's like, what happens if he comes in the game and he struggles after
Yeah.
having 2 weeks where you're producing explosive pass plays? What do the Giants do then? Right? Are they going to put him out there and then be like, oh shit? Because that's a tough defense.
Yeah. And I think that there's a question here where I think that Brian Dable set a precedent last year that we saw was that he's going to play the best player no
Hmm.
matter who you are. And he made that a clear example with a guy like Kenny Galladay. He didn't care how much Kenny Galladay was getting paid. He was going to start Marcus Johnson, David Sills, whoever, because he felt that Kenny Galladay hadn't earned the job, and it's an interesting conversation now where if this locker room is behind Tyrod Taylor and Tyrod Taylor is playing better, what do they do? And I know, like, the counterpoint to a lot of it is there's a lot of big Daniel Jones supporters in that locker room, and that's totally true. But at the thing is that Tyrod has been playing better, at least in my opinion, and I think probably a lot of those players' opinions. And there's a lot of guys who are new to that team, and they they are seeing it as well. So, it's I don't know how they're gonna handle it if Jones is struggling when he comes back.
Yeah, the one thing I would push back on what you just said is, and I've heard Bobby Skinner make this point. I think he might have said it on the stream with our buddies at New York Revival when they were on. Shout out to El Jefe and Spiro and Eli. Um, they had no problem playing guys, not playing guys they did not pay. But it's a whole different ballgame when your regime decided to hand over a lucrative multi-year contract to a quarterback, and then within 7 games you're saying, "Nah, we're going to sit you." That's
Yeah.
a whopper of an admission to make, especially if the guy's coming off injury. And so
Mhm.
I don't really see a scenario where Daniel Jones does not play and does not start. If he's healthy, and I think that's still I have no idea where this guy's health is with respect to his neck injury. We keep hearing that he's still symptomatic from a severe neck injury, and it's just kind of hard to imagine how much healthier he is and how. But then again, if he's been cleared to play, he's been cleared to play. Um, but if he's cleared by next week and he's able to take contact and he's able to practice, it's just hard to imagine them saying, "Yeah, we're going to hold you out for this game. And we're going to let you rest another week." They'll get him
Yeah.
back out there. I think the question then becomes like, fine, if he comes out and he looks healthy and he's slinging it, and the offense looks like it's looked the last couple of weeks and producing explosive plays, great. But if he's not, you know, um, and I know some people are going to say, "Well, the Commanders are a terrible defense." Well, the Bills aren't. Um, and he
Yeah.
was producing, Tyrod was producing explosive plays against them too. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. The national discussion is going to start tonight and tomorrow about the Tyrod Taylor Daniel Jones quarterback controversy. It may not be one in the minds of the general manager and the GM and the minds of many fans, but I promise you, the national media is now saying, you know, they can't ignore what their eyes are telling them. They're going to say this is a controversy. This should be a battle for who's the starting quarterback. So we have an interesting issue going on there, and we'll see how it plays out. But I fully expect Jones, once he's cleared to actually play. What I'm curious about is what they do once he does play, if he doesn't play well. And he wasn't playing well when he got hurt.
That's so much harder of the conversation though, because if, you pay this guy and he struggles and it's like, what are you gonna do? It's a lot easier to just say, like, let's keep seeing what we have out of Tyrod because they kind of have a built-in excuse that this guy's hurt and kind of just be like, we're gonna take our time with you. But the second he goes back in there, if you're pulling him out, it almost feels like you're pulling him out for the last time type of thing.
Well, if you want to be real about it, Monty, I think you've seen enough evidence already where the only conclusion you can reach, and I mentioned this, I think, in a reply to one of your posts on the timeline today, was the Giants have a quarterback problem. It's not necessarily this particular controversy of Tyrod versus Jones, but the quarterback problem is that it's very clear that they're not getting the kind of quarterback play from their starter that they need. And they really have a first round problem here. And what I mean by that is you can see the potential in this offense if you have a higher level of quarterback play built in and you're not getting it. You're not getting it from Jones. You're beginning to see some glimpses of it from Tyrod Taylor, but let's be real, it's Tyrod Taylor. Like he's not some superstar quarterback. He's a solid career backup quarterback at this point. He's a veteran, he's savvy, but he's not anything spectacular.
Mhm.
Um, if he looks like he could be running this offense better than Daniel Jones, you have a real problem. And that problem, maybe you don't solve it now, but I think it's pretty clear that the Giants would be really willfully obtuse if they didn't enter the offseason and the draft thinking we need to get ourselves a new quarterback. Like plain and simple. That's where we are. Like you
Yeah.
cannot go into 2024 with the same situation where Daniel Jones is your unquestioned QB1 for that year in the future. If you do that, you've committed general manager malpractice after what you're watching. The only thing that's going to change that dynamic is one, Jones comes back healthy and stays healthy, and two, he plays lights out the rest of the year. He has to do those things. But even then, you're dealing with a guy with a major neck injury twice within a
Yeah.
2 year window. How do you not try to plan for the future at this point? I really do think they have a first round problem. I don't, and obviously that doesn't mean they're definitely going to take a quarterback in the first round. I certainly hope they do.
Mhm.
I think when we get to our quarterback class, we'll see why. But they need to address it early. Let's put it that
Yeah, I agree.
way. Anyway, any more thoughts on the offense and the whole quarterback controversy or
Not
anything else
too
in the offense?
not too much, man. I think people are making way too much of this offensive line being fixed and just don't want to give credit to Tyrod Taylor. The last thing they want to do is to say that Tyrod Taylor played a good game and
Yeah.
played a good game last week, and they'll do anything they can. The one thing that drives me crazy is that when Daniel Jones was playing poorly, everyone's response who supported Daniel Jones was, can't we say the offensive line is playing bad? Why do we have to focus on Daniel Jones? And to that, I respond, the offensive line is playing bad. It's been bad for over a decade. We have
Yep.
an offensive line problem, but two things can be true, and Daniel Jones is playing poorly. And suddenly, the people who are screaming at me to acknowledge the offensive line, acknowledge the offensive line, acknowledge the offensive line,
Mhm.
are now like, no, we don't have an offensive line issue. Like, the offensive line is, we got fixed by getting Justin Pugh in here. It's
Magically better.
yeah,
Yeah.
the Justin
No.
Pugh, who is not a good left tackle, fix this line. Like, look, don't get me wrong. I think there is a path to this offensive line looking much better this year. I think Justin Pugh's leadership and playing in the right position could actually help. I think Andrew Thomas, more importantly, being back at left tackle will make a huge difference. I think
Yes.
John Michael Schmitz being back at center and pushing Bredesen out, who's an awful center,
Yeah.
pushing him out and putting him in a guard where he is one of our like better guards. Like, suddenly we have like a
They're
more
making the better
competent
line.
line. Yeah,
Yeah.
so, like, I could see that being good, but what we have right now is not good. It isn't. It is, even if it's, you wanna say it's better than what it was, it is not a competent line whatsoever.
Well, I'm gonna be eagerly awaiting those PFF, grades. I know PFF is
Agreed.
not the end all be all, but at least they make an attempt to be somewhat standardized with their scoring system, so at least judging week after week on the same team, you get some gauge of performance and trajectory. So I'm I think we had the same discussion last week where people were saying the exact same thing. Well, the line was so good, and I remember we were thinking, no, it didn't really look good. Like when you really watch the game, it didn't look good. And they graded out like maybe a tick better than the week before when they were horrendous. Um, so they were still pretty bad. I'm gonna guess they're probably gonna be a tick better than last week. So I'm still thinking grades in the 50s is what we're probably gonna see. Maybe somebody will be in the 60s. Um, but I'd be surprised if we saw much better than that. I think we're going to be in the same territory. And again, at least it's something approaching an objective metric. So
Yep,
we'll
and
see.
I
I think
think
that's what worth waiting for.
and I assume these pressures, I could be wrong, but I assume these pressures are gonna be between like 12 and 18, like we've seen basically every single week
Yeah,
outside of, like, I think it was like Dallas, we had like 20-ish or something like that, but
I'm
it
going to
was
get he. I don't know how many he threw. What did he throw? Like 39 times or 29 times, something like that, right? So I mean, he's probably going to have a pressure rate. I'm guessing he's going to be in the mid 40% range again. Like he has been, like Daniel Jones has been, right? And then like sort of consistently. Not good numbers for a line, and I think that's where he's going to end up landing. Well, we'll see.
Yep,
Either way, I think the offense looked a lot better, at least in terms of producing explosive pass plays, moving the ball, yardage in the air. It looked better. 279 air yards is very impressive considering what we were doing before. Got another 106 on the ground, 77 from Saquon on 21 carries. So wasn't very impactful. Was only getting 3.7 yards per carry. Not very efficient. Um, but he also had 3 catches of 41 yards and a touchdown. So he was
yep,
overall his production was nice. He had 100 and what is that, 18 yards total. and a
Yeah,
touchdown. So solid game overall but the run game itself was not great. It was only averaging 3.3 yards per carry. So
you can blame that
not
on the
very efficient.
offensive line. That
Right.
was bad.
Yeah. Again, that like you want to measure like value of the offensive line. A lot of times it's directly in like that yards per carry in the run game. Um, and there's some other metrics, but we were at 3.3. Washington, by contrast, had 4 yards per carry, but they only ran the ball 19 times for 76 yards. That's a whole other issue that they're not running the rock at all. Like they've turned completely around from last year where they're throwing constantly. They threw the ball 42 times and ran it on only 19. Now they trailed most of the game, so that might have been part of it, but they basically have abandoned the run most of the year. And
Yeah.
that played into the hands of our defense. So I think that's a nice segue to go into our defense. What can you say about these guys, man? Remember a few weeks ago, Wink Martindale was about to be fired and
Yeah.
he was
It
to be
was,
replaced,
gonna be the
and
scapegoat. Man,
7 points against the Commanders, 14 against the Bills. They did give up a lot of points against Miami, but everybody does.
but
But they got
it was
three turnovers.
it was a 24-point differential. They let up 31, but they had a pick six. So what the defense accounted for was only
Was 20,
24-point
which
difference,
is not a ton against that offense.
for against the best
And
offense in the NFL.
and they only gave up 10 defensive points, if I recall, against Seattle. So, we're talking
And one of
about uh, go
or
ahead.
no, it was 17, but we put them on the 5-yard line at one point. So that was not fair to the defense. That was the fumble put on the 5. So
Oh,
really
I'm not
terrible.
counting
Yeah.
yeah, I mean that. It was 10 points basically that they
Yeah, I
actually gave
agree.
up. So, I mean, so that's 3 out of 4 games where they were at 10, 14, and 7 against some pretty decent offenses. Seattle's offense is very good. Buffalo's offense is very good. Washington's offense was middle of the pack coming into this game. So really kicking ass on defense, not giving up points, not giving up yards, but more importantly, in my opinion, just absolutely dominating at the line of scrimmage. Dexter Lawrence had 8 pressures today. Well, he's a monster. Like I don't know what they were thinking, what Eric Bieniemy was thinking today. They had Nick Gates go one on one against Dexter Lawrence. They weren't trying to double team him, and Dexter Lawrence just dominated him. Like why would you ask Nick Gates to do that? That is insane. So that was bad. Dexter killed him. Kayvon Thibodeau was all over the field. He had another, what do you have, sack and a half today? I think he had like 3 tackles for a loss. I'm gonna look it up while we talk. Um, where's Kayvon in here? Yeah, he had 4 total tackles, 1 solo, 1.5 sack, and 1 tackle for a loss.
Yep.
Very productive. And then Dex, 6 tackles, 2 solo, two sacks, 1 tackle for a loss. Bobby Okereke, again, another solid game, not like the game he had last week, but 11 tackles, 7 solos, just solid in stopping the run. Deontay Banks had 7 tackles, 5 solos. He was all over the place. He really was at the line of scrimmage and at the point of attack. He wasn't letting guys get past him. Jason Pinnock had 6 tackles. These guys were all over the field. Cordell Flott, 5 tackles, 3 solos. So these guys came to play, man. They were hitting, they were penetrating through the line, they were wreaking havoc. They had Sam Howell in hell all night. I mean,
Oh
all
my god.
day. Yeah, and he looked flustered. So I was really impressed. That was my big takeaway from the game, other than how good Tyrod looked with the offense. What are your thoughts on the defense?
I mean, Wink Martindale masterclass, man.
Hmm.
I mean, 12 QB hits on the day. We had 1 from Pinnock, 4 from Dexter Lawrence, 2 from Micah McFadden, 2 from Kayvon Thibodeau, 2 from Dexter Lawrence, and 1 from Jihad Ward. I mean, these guys were absolutely dominating Sam Howell, and it was the right way to go about this. That was what Sam Howell struggles with. Sam Howell holds the ball and he makes bad offensive line play worse. He's very similar to Daniel Jones in that way, but he's even worse than Daniel Jones at that stuff because he's a younger player who's still kind of like feeling it out in the league, and it's been a huge Achilles heel to him. And Wink Martindale went after this man as hard as he could. We had that twist that with
Oh
Leonard
my!
Williams.
I
That was
texted you. I was like, "Oh my
yeah,
god, they ran a twist!" I was like, I couldn't
yeah,
believe it.
it was
Wink is
awesome, man.
dude. Wink is evolving, and I
He
think like,
does.
and we're seeing. I obviously Wink blitzes because that's what Wink does. I think he blitzed on something like 55% of the plays today. but that makes sense. With a quarterback like Howell, who you wanna rattle, a young quarterback, you wanna scare, and he's gonna hold on to the ball too long, you wanna put him under pressure. You don't wanna give him time to hit hole shots and do what he does well, which is take deep shots and take
Mhm.
advantage of his receivers. They had him under pressure all night. They had him, I mean, all game. I keep saying night. They had him rattled. Wink really played this perfectly. Um, and yeah, when they ran the twist, I was like, oh my goodness, he's evolving. He's actually showing four-man pressures and running twists because that on that particular play, I think they did try to double Dex. And Dex ate up a double team, and then like you see Leo with like the with cat like I guess that's why they call him Big Cat, right? With a cat
Yeah.
like quickness, just like with running the twist around Dex and just flying into the backfield and just slamming Hal to the ground. It was impressive. It was one of the better plays I've seen from the front four. He had that was his one sack. He also had two hits, two tackles, two solos, one tackle for a loss. And then Deontay Banks played great. I'm waiting to see what his numbers are in coverage, but he had the one interception, which was
Yep.
just a duck. I don't know if that ball was tipped or not, or his arm got hit when he threw it. But Howell had, who was it, McLaurin or Dotson? He had somebody wide open on that play, and he just threw that ball up, and it was just a slow motion like ephus pitch, and
Yeah.
and Banks like ran backwards and just picked it out of the air, which was nice to see because he doesn't normally get interceptions.
No,
So
that's not his thing. But
yeah.
yeah, we got another turnover, man.
Yeah.
Another week, another turnover, and we almost had another one, but
Oh,
poor
okay, fine.
Tavon. Yeah, for a guy who had such a good game, he could have had a walk-in pick six, and he dropped that one. That
There's a
was tough to watch.
there's a reason he's not he doesn't play offense.
Yeah,
Oh my
maybe we
goodness.
should rethink this coverage stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, he's like, not much of a coverage threat if you if you can't catch that thing. I
That's
think he was
funny,
honestly,
boy.
I think he was shocked at how easy that ball was coming. It looked like a punt coming at him.
Yeah, it was a little
Um,
bit of a knuckleball, but
right.
yeah, I
He
mean,
looked he
he
looked
should have got that, but he's a
Yeah,
defensive end.
that
I'm
was a
not
tou
gonna freak out.
that was a touchdown. He would have had yet another touchdown, against the Commanders. I think it almost caught him off guard at how, like, ridiculous
Yeah,
that thing was. But
um,
that let's not let that take away from the game he had. He was all
he had a
over the
great game.
backfield. And every week, you're seeing the slow, steady drumbeat of Kayvon Thibodeau's presence being felt more and more. He's announcing himself into the backfield of these games. He's picking up more and more responsibilities, and wreaking havoc. And it's now people will say, "Oh, well, it doesn't translate into sacks." Well, he's up to five. What did he get? 5.5 sacks.
5.5 sacks, and we are going on to week 8. We're less than halfway through the season. He is on track for double-digit sacks, so
He's trending nicely, and it's not just the sacks. It's nice that he picks up the sacks because I like him. I like to see these guys actually finish and get the stats to put onto their resume as they put together a good game. Sometimes the sacks aren't like the big impact that they have in the game, and you can see Kayvon has a much bigger impact on the game than just the sacks. But it's good to see him get them, like
yeah,
get a sack and a half a game, do something like that on these games, and they start adding up. But what you're seeing him do is just drive guys backwards. Like again, Charles Leno could not block him. And it was the same as, last year's game. He just could not control Kayvon. Although Kayvon was using much more nuanced moves. He was using a lot of inside moves and powering past him, using his speed. Really exciting, especially considering Azeez Ojulari is MIA again. He's back on IR, and we're depending on Jihad Ward on the other side. But you know, it was very exciting to see. So I was pumped up, man. I don't know what else to say. I think people need to lay off Wink Martindale. Like they
yeah.
really need to stop.
They I was saying it from fucking beginning, guys, is this guy is a proven defensive coordinator, has put together multiple top 5 defenses and had a good year last year. And then suddenly he starts struggling. It's like, well, the Ravens let him go for a reason. It's like, I don't care if the Ravens let him go. They made a mistake letting him go, and we shouldn't make the same fucking mistake just because he's had a few bad games. It's insane. Like, look, it comes down to, well, I mean, I think we talked about it with like the Giants, where we could see a team not necessarily want to commit long term to the type of defensive scheme and philosophy that Wink Martindale has. It's very unique in some senses, but and I think that's ultimately what it came down with Baltimore, and it really showed its weaknesses when you don't have a secondary, and he had a bad year, but he is a top defensive coordinator when he has the right pieces to run his defense. And even when he doesn't, he still can put together a really good game plan when he's facing the right offense to go up against for his
I
team.
mean,
So,
he had Trey Hawkins starting out there because Adoree Jackson couldn't play. You know, let's
yep.
not forget Adoree didn't play, so they were out. The secondary they were running out in terms of the corner room was Banks, who's just becoming just a reliable. He's just a dog out there. He's really good
Yeah.
as a rookie. Very hard position to play at the level he's playing as a rookie. Um, Hawkins was the other outside corner, and you had Cordell Flott, who let's not forget about him. This guy was benched. He lost his job that they wanted him to get as this nickel corner coming out of camp. He's just one of these guys. I forgot who I was talking to on the timeline with. It might have been either one of our friends, Big Blue Goon, or it might have been New York Giants fan in Charlotte. Shout out to those guys. But I think one of them mentioned like he might just be one of those guys who's just a gamer on game day. He plays
Yeah.
better on Sunday than he does during practice, and he looks like it. He looks like he's doing a solid job shutting down like his responsibilities in the nickel.
Mhm.
You would think he had Curtis Samuel today. I think he did. I'm gonna have to go back and watch the game. I think that was the responsibility he drew for the most part. Curtis Samuel had 8 targets and only had 4 catches for 25 yards. And Curtis
Yep.
Samuel, for those who have not been following, has been their high volume target guy. Like Terry McLaurin has gotten the most targets, but Samuel's right behind him in terms of receptions, efficiency, yardage, more so than Jahan Dotson. And he was not a factor today at all. 4 for 25. Jahan Dotson, 5 for 43. And only McLaurin had 6 for 90. And that's, Terry McLaurin's one of the better receivers in the game.
Yeah.
But it didn't feel like that impactful.
Yeah, I would say that I definitely saw I felt like Deontay Banks played a really good game. He really did. He had that pick and he showed up some moments like and really went head to head with Terry. But I'll say that Terry's definitely the guy I've seen get the best of Banks the most this season. Banks has been pretty locked down, and you definitely on a few occasions you saw Terry make Banks look like a rookie a little bit. But
Well,
he's always
there was a one deep pass to McLaurin for 31 yards down the
yeah.
sideline. And to be honest, that was really good coverage.
Yeah, he was still
And
there. He
Howell
beat
just made
him,
a
but he
perfect throw and he made a great
yeah.
catch.
There was one I was thinking of where it was up the sideline as well. It might be the same one, I'm not sure, but he had a step or so on him, and, it was a nice throw, and it was a nice catch, but he definitely got beat, but, like, he normally just has the makeup speed to catch up with that in
Yeah.
that case he couldn't,
Yeah.
but,
They don't turn into touchdowns,
n
and,
no, there
and
was
that's
that
important.
it almost turned into a touchdown that one, but McKinney touched him. We thought everyone remember that one where,
Oh, yeah.
he got
Yeah.
up and started running. We're like, "Fuck, is that a
Yeah.
touchdown?" But,
McKinney made
um,
helmet tackle, which I
yeah,
appreciated.
that was the one I'm thinking of where,
Okay.
Banks kinda got beat on that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was a good step
Yeah.
behind on that one.
Look, he's a rookie corner going
Yeah,
against an arguably top 10 wide receiver in the NFL, top 10, top 15, um, who makes a lot of guys look bad. And he held his own. Again,
yeah.
taking on the
I
top
have
responsibility. If the worst your defense does is give up 6 for 90 to Terry McLaurin with no touchdowns, and everybody else is held down, and you can trust your one guy to just take Terry McLaurin by himself, that's a win.
yeah.
That
I have no issues with the game that Deontay Banks had today. I was honestly almost, like, interested in, like in a weird way, I don't know, like happy, but like seeing him get actually challenged, be like, Let's see what this is what it looks like when a
yeah,
wide receiver gives him a bad time." And it was like, wasn't that bad.
right. No, I mean, bottom line, defense played great.
Yeah,
Wing Martindale, not only does he have these guys playing well with his style of football, I think those who pay a lot of attention to like his personnel groupings, the type of formations he runs, he's once again adapting as a
mhm,
coordinator. He's not just plain old cover one, cover zero, cover three, wink, and just blitz, blitz, blitz. He's showing all sorts of different looks, and I think he simulates a lot of pressure. But at the end of the day, he is rushing 4 guys a lot. And I think you're beginning to see that benefit us over the middle of the field and in the intermediate area. He's taking away plays for quarterbacks and still getting home. And that's a testament to the quality of the players on on the defensive line. But he's getting there. So look, man, I have nothing bad to say about the way this team played this game today. Um, 14-7 doesn't sound great, but it felt like they should have put up 24 points and walked away from this game a lot easier. So
Yep.
this is a solid victory. So, the next point of this is, where does this take us? It pumps you up, but you're still 2-5. Um,
Yeah.
and you got the Jets next week, which is again a potentially winnable game. The Jets are by no means a juggernaut, but their defense is outstanding. And this game might determine the direction this team ends up going in. Obviously, I don't expect them to sell off parts tomorrow. They won the game, and they made it clear they're not selling off Saquon Barkley. I'd be surprised if they sold off anybody else this week. Although I
Especially,
think that's
like,
still
Adoree being hurt.
a Dory hurt. I just would be surprised at this point, and
Mhm.
I think it's a mistake personally. But
Agreed.
let's say they don't. If they win that game, forget it. I don't think they're selling anybody. They're going to try to make a run at this. If they lose that game and they fall to 2-6, it's still tough, man. Like let's enjoy the moment, but let's not forget that their probability of success in terms of making the playoffs are still down in like the low single digits right
Mhm.
now. They're not getting much better, and they still are dealing with a really, really bad offensive line, quarterback situation in flux. So you're Joe Shane. How are you handling the next week or two? How are you approaching it?
Nothing's changed for me personally. I don't know what they'll do, but I would still try selling the pieces that you don't see as part of the long-term future. I would capitalize on a great game from Leonard Williams and see if I can move him and get a 3rd or a 4th round pick similar to what you might get in a comp pick and shed some of that salary and, give a you spent a lot of money on this interior defensive line this free agency. You got Ashawn Robinson, you got Nacho, you brought in a Jordan Riley, you got back DJ Davidson. Like, you have a good defensive line group. Leonard Williams is a great player, but I don't like you didn't extend him for a reason. You're not bringing him back. You made that really clear. Move on from him. He had a great game, incredible game. Yeah, I'd be fine with that being the last game as a Giant. Him being that being the last one we saw. Um, I think he has some value. I see a team trading for him. I don't know where Dory's at health wise, but he's a guy I'd move on from. We just saw us play a great game without Adoree Jackson. That
Yeah,
one's easy. That one's an easy one if you can get him cleared health wise.
I think that's going to be
Um,
the issue.
yeah, I think Saquon's I think a tough sell to ownership. That's the tough one there.
Yeah, I've given up on that one.
Mhm. Um,
The reports coming out, he's not going anywhere.
Yeah, so, I mean, I would, but at the same time, I'm not gonna risk my job over it either, so I get for a fucking, like, well, I mean, I'd love a extra 3rd or 4th round pick, but it is what it is. Um, but yeah, man, I would still I mean, and if anybody would take Paris Campbell, that's easy. He's not a part of this offense anymore. I'd keep looking to sell pieces, man. That's where I'm at, but I don't see them going that way. Unfortunately, just from everything we're hearing. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think Leo becomes the most attractive piece at this point. And here's the issue. I know they're not going to, especially if they beat the Jets, they're probably not going to do it. Um, I think they're gonna try to make a run at this, and they're gonna say Leo's too important. Which, I mean, I can understand the football argument, but here's the reality: you're probably not paying him at the end of the year. His market value we've discussed is probably going to be still really high, somewhere between like 16 and $18 million a year, you
Yep.
know, on a multi-year deal, which could get you a third round comp. But here's the thing: you still need an edge rusher in this defense. It's a glaring need because I think at this point it's safe to say Aziza Jalari's health and his lack of availability is not anything you can go into the 2024 season thinking you can rely on. I think he's fantastic if you consider him a pass rushing edge 3. We thought we needed an edge 3. I think he is the edge 3.
Yeah.
Um, and you need somebody that you can trust down in, down out opposite Kayvon Thibodeau, and you're not gonna be able to address every potential need for the team in the next few years through the draft. You just can't. You need to leave open some money, in free agency. So, looking at the free agents that are available, I mean, you and I talked a lot about Daniil Hunter. He's 28, he'll be 29 next year. Perfectly good age for an edge rusher. He's having a ridiculous season. He's up to 8 sacks already. We just talk about Kayvon's 5.5, and Hunter's up to 8, and he's impactful. He's like wrecking games.
Yeah.
He's gonna be a free agent. Somebody you should want to target, right? Just as an
Next
example.
to Andre Patterson.
Right. Or other guys, Romeo Coro. There's a bunch of guys out there who like maybe not as good as Hunter, but Carl Lawson's a free agent. The
Yep.
Jets aren't even, like they're good players out there. If you sign any one of them, the comp pick that you think you got by losing Leo is just washed away. You get nothing. You
Yep.
get
And
nothing.
and then if you go out and get a guard, let's say, that's something I really think we need to do is sign like a premium offensive guard.
It's
You go do
gone.
that, Saquon Barkley's gone. Like that one's
Exactly.
washed away. Adoree, whoever it is, like
Right.
that's gonna be
So
right in that
so
neighborhood.
so
So
so and so you're not even getting these comp picks, and those are really 2025 picks anyways, but you're not even getting those. Like, realistically, I think that it's hard to envision a world in which they say, "We're gonna let these guys go, and we're not gonna spend the money to replace
yeah.
them. We're just gonna sit on the cash." Because then what's the point of it, right? What's the point? Then all you're saying then you're putting all your eggs in the, "We think we can make a run for a Super Bowl in 2023," which sounds completely batshit crazy,
Mhm.
if that's your approach. Your approach has to be somewhat forward looking. I'm not saying you have to sell every single player. That's probably what I would do, but I'm a zealot. Um, but I think realistically, you want to get some value out of some of these players. I think Leo's one, maybe one of the receivers for a late round pick. If you can sell off one of them, a guy like Campbell or Slayton, you know, there are guys who carry value. Um, and certainly Adoree, I think, but there are players out there who you're gonna wanna tap into the free agent market, and if you do, that's fine, but you're gonna lose the value of the comp picks on these guys, and I just think that's not the best way to do business personally. You wanna actually collect on the comp picks if you're not gonna spend the money in free agency, or just turn them, I think preferably turn the players into draft picks while you can, in a season where you're unlikely to win anything. So, um, personally, I don't think the Giants are gonna do anything this week. They should, but I don't think they will. Um, they're gonna probably wait till next week. If they lose to Jets and they fall 2-6 with 2 days left to go and before the deadline, I can see them making a couple of moves. Um, if they don't lose to the Jets, I'm gonna guess that they're just gonna not trade anybody. And I've kind of resigned myself to that's probably the reality of what they're gonna do, which is I think a problem they're gonna not think about now, and then they're gonna really regret it come draft day. Like really, really regret it come draft day.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, that's the one tough part about, the timing of this win. If, this happens 1 week later, you might have the pieces sold off and, you feel a little better. I'm still, I think that the timing of this win was good in the sense of I wanted it really to get pushed home that Tyrod has been playing well and this offense to look better and getting the win kind of hammers that point home. But it does push away a little bit from this takes away from the objective here, and that's to build towards the future.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
it's okay to let Tyrod, play really well and enjoy your team and get some wins if you can, and help develop a guy like Jalen Hyatt. If all Tyrod does is help develop Jalen Hyatt, it's worth keeping him on the field. Plain and
yeah,
simple.
100%.
If that's his only job is to make sure that the ball gets thrown to Jalen Hyatt, it's worth it. But that should not distract you from building for the future. So I hope that Joe Shane thinks like that. I don't think he will. I think he's gonna I think he's gonna probably just sit tight and say, "Let's see where this team goes, and I don't wanna take away the parts, and we'll deal with what we deal with later," because that's typically what the Giants do. But I happen to think it's foolish. I think there is a reality to where you sit in the records. 2-5 is nothing to be thumping your chest about. Happy with today's win, but you're a long way from relevant, you know?
Yep.
And one loss along the way, and it's over. That's it.
Yep.
That's how much margin they have for error.
Yep, and we talked about it though. This is the thing. Maybe this works out because I know we both would love that they went here and traded 4 pieces off, but you know realistically, how many trades happen at the trade deadline overall? Not even just talking about per team, just overall, like 4 or 5 total, maybe.
Right.
So if
If
we
the
could be
Giants make one, yeah.
give me one of those and it's like a Leo or it's significant and get like a third round pick, I'd be thrilled if we just traded Leo, took off about 9 to $10 million in cap savings, got a significant pick, and look, you do that. You trade Leo, that third round pick, I promise you guys, is going to like I already started diving these mock drafts a little bit. I did a mock draft that I was thrilled with because it was completely unrealistic, and I didn't even drop a single defensive player. It's gonna be tough to try to fill all these needs with just the picks we have, and
So
even get
we've done 8 position groups so far, and I
yep.
think for 7 of them we had 7 players, and one I think we had 5, and I'm forgetting which that might have been offensive tackle.
Mhm.
What is that? Sorry,
You're good. Um,
my browser went crazy. Halloween time. Um, so I think so. What is that like? 54 players we reviewed so far, and
mhm.
a lot of them are not a lot, but some of them are day 3 guys. But when you start putting this together, and we still have 3 position groups left to go. When you start putting this together and you start looking at like creating a big board and where these guys fit, like there's some damn good football players flying into like well past like pick 100 when you're looking at this.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just better than just about any year I can remember. So the teams that are going to hoard picks are going to be the ones that really have an impact that's going to make their roster better for years to come. And the Giants right now have 6. They have 6 picks. They
I'll
want to get to double digits.
I'll say, this will be a conversation we'll have as we get closer to it. But if we're not at have May in position for May or in position for Caleb, and we can't get up to go get those guys, I want to go back down and get these picks because
It's
there's
seemingly a more and more relevant conversation as we inch every week further into the season that it seems likely the Giants will miss the playoffs. It seems likely they're going to land somewhere in the top 10 in terms of picks and pick order, the way the season is shaping out. It also seems not extremely likely they're going to be in the top 2. So they're
yep.
going to be somewhere between like picks probably 3 and 8, somewhere in there,
I think we
most
have
likely.
over a 90% chance to be in the top 10. According to
Right,
ESPN.
right. The
So,
probability is we're going to be somewhere in that range, and it's going to test your theory and your resolve of what you can do and what you want to do. There are blue chippers. You can always take a blue chipper, and you can take a third quarterback. If you really like the quarterback, you probably should just do that.
yeah.
Or if you're not 100% convinced on the quarterback, whoever's QB3 at that point,
Mhm.
you can try to trade back down a little bit later into the round and see if you can get more. It's going to be an interesting use of pick, but I don't want them to go into draft day with that as their strategy to acquire more picks. That should be like a
Yeah,
last resort.
I got you.
All right. I think you want to come in with plenty of ammo so you have the flexibility to move up or down in the draft. You don't want to be forced to move down just because you don't have the picks.
Yep.
So I think they really would be doing themselves a favor by trading some of these guys now. And hey, they could trade guys after the season too. Like you don't know. Like they may take guys who are like going to be on expiring deals next year and decide to trade them in the offseason or something along those lines. But right now, you have a valuable asset in Leo. You have a potentially valuable asset in Dory. I think just those 2 players. Leo would hurt for sure. Losing Leo would hurt your defense. Um, how much? I mean, I think I'm kind of willing to find out, and I think it's worth getting the pick. I don't know how much losing a Dory is going to hurt our defense at this point.
No,
You're playing without him, and he wasn't playing great in the slot. Um, I'm not sure what he gets on the market at this point, but even if you got a 5th or a 4th for him, I think you take it. Um,
agreed.
so these are guys I'm looking to move. So I'm kind of hoping Joe Shane does it anyway, but we'll see. But anyway, do you have any other closing thoughts on this game or anything heading into
No,
next week?
no, not really. I mean, just, we'll be talking tomorrow when we get more numbers on here, and we'll see if our eyes lied to us, or well, what it is, because I think with this team is a lot of the same of what we've seen, but our defense stepped up, and our quarterback is playing well under the circumstances and
The
using
theme of the week is going to be the Tyrod Taylor Daniel Jones quarterback controversy. It is
a
absolutely
lot
going
of
to be the theme of the
spaces.
week. A
Yeah.
lot of spaces, a lot of fun on in Giants media, Giants Twitter. It should be a lively week. Uh, at least it's a more interesting conversation than who are we trading. As much as I want to see people traded, it's
Yeah.
a more fun conversation to have. Like who's actually better to win because we actually got to win. So tune in. We appreciate you guys for following us on at He's a Giant Pod on Twitter. I'm Sal at Queens_guy. Monte is at Monte Cristo at MONTECRI5TO. You can catch us on iTunes, Spotify, or YouTube. Um, for those who've been tuning in, we appreciate you. And we're coming out later this week with our safety episode. I've already finished my safety homework. Monty hasn't started it. It's
All
like
right,
the
all right.
but we promise to get through safety, another good class. I'll promise you that, a really, really good safety class, and then hopefully next week we'll get to corners, and then the big one should be soon after that with the quarterback class, which is going to be an interesting way for us to present things because it's a long, long list of players.
Yep.
Uh, but tune in for more episodes of He's Giant, and we'll see you guys around on Twitter. Uh, that's about it. Monty, any closing thoughts?
Yep. Good Giants win. Fire Bobby Johnson. Fire Thomas McGahee.
Oh yeah,
Have a good night,
sorry.
everyone.
Yeah, make sure to fire those two tomorrow. Thank you guys. Have
Yeah.
a good night.
Thank you guys. Bye.